You are listening to 95.7 FM WELT, Fort Wayne, Radioactive. The opinions and views expressed in the show are those of the hosts and guests only. They do not represent those of FreeThought Fort Wayne, WELT, or any other organization. Welcome to the Hoosier Humanist Hour, where we explore science, religion, culture, ethics, and community from the humanist perspective. Join us as we discuss those topics and more, free from the ideologies of religion and superstition.
Hello and welcome to the Hoosier Humanist Hour. This show is usually put together by members of FreeThought Fort Wayne, a chapter of the American Humanist Association. To get in touch with us, you can find us on facebook.com/FreeThoughtFW. Our email address is fortwayneaha@gmail.com. You know, Facebook is the most up-to-date place to find out what we're up to. Our website is currently being updated and is looking pretty good. FreeThoughtFW.org. So feel free to check that out as well. I think we have a great show today. We're going to be talking about protest religions. So those are religions that are not standard religions. They've been created as a direct opposition to normal religions out there. Examples of those would be Satanism, things like the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, the church. I mentioned the Church of Satan. I think the Amish can be thrown in there as well. There's something called Communism that comes out of Sweden. So I think those are some interesting examples that we're going to go over. Today we have myself, V, we have Caleb, we have D, and our sound engineer, Andrew. How's everybody doing?
Great. Happy to be here.
Doing great, man. Excited to do the show today.
Good. All right. Just kind of in general, what's your guys' thoughts on these kind of protest religions? Are they serving a purpose in our society? Are they good, bad, distraction from, the general conversation about religion? Or I don't know, any thoughts on that?
I'd say they're fantastic. I think it's wonderful when these things pop up. It really puts into perspective how important it really is to maintain the separation of church and state. And we'll get into some examples of why that's the case, but that's just where I stand on it.
Sure. I like it too. I think it brings out it's just a way of taking their own logic and using it in a way that's different, and hopefully them realizing that they're doing the same thing with their religion, more or less. I know that's pretty unclear, but basically it just points out hypocrisy. And right. I think pointing out hypocrisy is really good for enlightening yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way to kind of segue into Satanism, because I would honestly put Satanism in a nutshell as the anti-status quo. It's like the best way I can think of to describe them. There's actually, I can't remember his name, but there was a writer that described Satanism a true satanic society, rather, as one in which the population consists of free-willed, free-spirited, fully conscious, self-disciplined individuals who neither need nor tolerate any external entity, quote, protecting them or telling them what they can or cannot do. So again, in a nutshell, I would kind of just summarize that as the anti-status quo.
I think most people don't really understand what Satanism, like when I was in religion, if you were satanic or like in a satanic church, then I believe that you actually worship the devil. So it's obviously not that, right?
Yes. Yeah. They don't think of the devil as a real creature. They use the devil as this symbol of rebellion. When Satan rebelled against God, in the Christian tradition, he was the first creature really to have the opportunity and to rebel against God. So So they're rebelling against the established religions by creating a religious organization of their own that allows them to organize, to pull kind of their resources together and to take action. It's really about activism, about pointing out hypocrisy, and they've done a lot of good things. They've partnered with many different organizations, done a lot through lawsuits, protests, all kinds of different events that they've had.
Yeah, absolutely, man. They were the ones that were famed for doing the Oklahoma City Satanist statue thing.
Right.
Yeah, that was the one where, for those of you who don't know, there was the Oklahoma City, the townspeople paid to have a very large monument put up that was the Ten Commandments right on the courthouse lawn. And in retaliation, the Satanists decided that they were going to put up their own monument, one of, anyone know his name by chance?
Baphomet?
Baphomet, that's what it was.
I think that's
which all of our listeners out there should look up, because it's an unbelievable statue.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's essentially, to kind of help you guys visualize this, it's a goat man with devil horns sitting on a throne, and it's got like stars of David and stuff like that on there. And they put that up for as actually, okay, I'm going to slow down here. It was originally meant to balance out the plethora of Christian symbology, and so it was alleged to be heralding the pluralism that they strive for in the wake of what they consider to be Christian imposition. They feel somewhat oppressed by Christians specifically. LaVey, who's the founder of the modern church, he actually used Christianity as the negative mirror for his faith, which is why it's the Church of Satanism, really. But the main reason for this was obviously to kind of highlight the fact that this was a clear violation of church and state. And it worked. It worked wonderfully. They had to change the language so that other people couldn't put up their own monuments. Like we couldn't put up a monument of Buddha if we wanted or something like that on the courthouse lawn.
Yeah, so they actually partnered with the ACLU, and it went to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that the Ten Commandments monument was in fact a religious symbol that's associated with Christianity, and it was kind of a endorsement of some of that particular religion, and they couldn't do that. They couldn't use public lands to endorse the government couldn't use public lands to endorse a particular religion over any other religion, and so they had to take the Ten Commandments down.
Yeah. So does this group have what is called the Satanic Bible? And if there is a Satanic Bible for them, is it just like how to be an activist? What is the Satanic Bible? Have you ever heard of the Satanic Bible?
Yeah, you can buy it for about $10 on Amazon.
Is the Satanic Bible associated with this group?
Yes, it's. I'm looking at the. As soon as you mentioned it, I looked it up real quick, and yeah, it's got Anton LaVey is the author on there.
Has anybody read this book?
I haven't.
I have not. Yeah, I honestly never even felt the urge to read that book.
Yeah, me either. But this is okay. So now, like, there's parts of this like satanic church that are like interesting, like in their work they do for equality and separation of church and state. But they have a Bible, a Satanic Bible. Okay, it's a little weird.
Well, yeah. No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's one of the things that helps solidify their religious protection under the law, is the fact that they have this doctrine to point to and say, no, we have our own holy books here. That just, again, it's just something that helps to validate the fact that they are a legitimate religion. At least that's my guess. I honestly don't know if that was the original intention. For all I know, it was for artistic purposes, and it just grew out of control.
Yeah, now I'm really interested in what the Satanic Bible means. or reads. But anyway, I'll have to.
Well, it
can't do
wouldn't
that now.
talk about God in the supernatural sense. They believe in actually a lot of humanistic values, like do no harm. How to improve our society. Things like that. I think actually they one of the things that I encountered on their website talked about how they should tax all churches. So all that stuff is probably spelled out in there, but it's more of a worldview as opposed to some kind of dogma or anything that you must believe this to be a Satanist.
Yeah. Well, LaVey was responsible for really pushing this Satanism as a serious religious movement, as opposed to like a club or like a literary movement. I'm looking here at some of my notes, and from what I gather, it looks as though what he did was to take all of the different Satanist religions that are out there and try to make a single continuity out of that, plus adding in his own flair. And what the book is alleged to describe is essentially the lens through which they view themselves, their group, and the cosmos. So it's their creed that tells them their place in the universe, essentially. So it's not too far off from any other religious text in that sense.
To give you a quote directly from their website, it says, "To the Satanist, he is his own God. Satan is a symbol of man living as his prideful carnal nature dictates." That doesn't quite make sense.
I'm curious how I should have looked into this but unfortunately I just now thought about it. I'm curious how their church is doing today. I wonder how their numbers are looking. I know it still exists.
Oh yeah,
LaVey's daughter is actually the one running it right now. She's the high priestess, Carly LaVey.
Well, one of the things that happened was, when they took down the Baphomet statue from Oklahoma, or I guess they never put it up, the statue was moved to Detroit, and it was displayed in front of some warehouse, something like that. And for the official unveiling, they had, from what I read, about 700 people show up for it. So it certainly has a following. Now, surely not all of those people were members of the church or affiliated in any way, but at least a few hundred supposedly were directly associated with the church. So in Detroit alone, so they have a following in the country.
I'm really curious though how seriously the people who are in the religion treat it as a religion. In that, I wonder if they believe that these rituals that they're doing are actually doing anything, if they're even supposed to. Because they still have these rituals. They had to insert language into the law so that these people couldn't drink their own urine, for example, because it's unsanitary. So now they have to. I don't know if this applies across the board, if this is on a federal level, but I know at least on certain states, instead of drinking urine, they're obligated to make the switch to vinegar.
Wow. Satanists are supposed to drink vinegar?
As opposed to their own urine if it calls for it. But I think that also applies to any other religion that might just happen to incorporate urine into their religious practices and rituals.
You've got to hand it. I've got to do more work on looking at this stuff. But a lot of times the satanic religion, all I hear about it is its work as, separation of church and state and all the stuff we already talked about, but I didn't know they were so weird.
Well, they are. That's
really weird. I think I had some misplaced respect for them. All of it's just gone straight out the window. That's great that they're doing this separation of church and state stuff, but that's about it. I don't want to be associated with them.
I can't get down with them, mostly due to the fact that they also view philosophy such as humanism, right, which is us, as largely a negative force on humanity, which I don't quite understand, because it sounds, from what I gather, as if most of their principles are humanistic in nature, but yet for whatever reason they actually despise humanists, among other things. They also despise liberal democracy.
Soft for them.
That would be my guess, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think we're quite hard enough.
Yeah,
So-
I'm not drinking my own piss. Sorry.
I found an interesting list here that talks about the 9 satanic sins,
I'm interested.
which I think is a very interesting list. So at the top of the list is stupidity. The cardinal sin of Satanism is stupidity.
I can get down with that.
It says it's too bad that stupidity isn't painful.
It's the other way around, man. Ignorance is bliss.
Apparently, yeah. So number 2 on the list is pretentiousness, or like empty posturing. I don't know. It's an interesting list. Number 3 there is solipsism, which I'm not really sure what the term really means. How do you guys understand solipsism?
I always took it to mean like the brain in a vat sort of thing.
Okay.
That's where my brain always went with solipsism.
The reality
Or the
is
idea
not
that,
real.
yeah.
That the
So I'm not really
cosmos is an
sure.
illusion.
Yeah.
I'm
okay.
wondering though if that's for them to, because I don't know. The only way I can think to incorporate that is to say that you can't be a solipsist. But I mean, well, the 2 ways then, because I can also see that maybe being interpreted to mean that you shouldn't. How is that? Wait, no, that doesn't make sense. That sounds contradictory because they're supposed to be their own gods, right?
Right. But in that sense, then if you don't believe that reality is real, how can you, and why would you do anything at all? Like if you think that none of the world matters because it's all just in your head, I mean, that would be
Well, I think it
very
would,
weird.
largely the way that I talk about solipsism with anybody is usually it comes up as an example. Well, it could be that we live in a solipsistic universe, XYZ, insert reasons here. And usually when a solipsism is brought up with me, I usually just put my foot down on it and say, look, it doesn't matter. Even if we did live in a solipsistic universe, we have to adhere to the rules and regulations of that universe. I mean, we still have to act as though that universe is real because we're bound by its rules. So it really doesn't even matter in the grand scheme if you guys don't exist and I'm the only real consciousness. There's nothing I can do about it.
Right. No, I agree
But
with
anyway,
that. That's a good point. Okay, we'll go down the list. So we went to solipsism. Number 4 is self-deceit. So don't fool yourself. Number 5 on there is herd conformity. So, be your own person, be your own God. That totally matches with their whole philosophy. Let's see, number 6, lack of perspective. That's an interesting one.
How can these be the same people who drink urine or vinegar?
It beats me.
Come on. Like this,
Was that an
this
old
stuff is all
thing?
very. This stuff is all
Caleb,
very
was that a
reasonable.
really old thing that is not practiced anymore? I mean,
I honestly don't know. There haven't been
Okay.
too many inside out sort of investigations into it over the years. I mean, they are protected under their religious flag. So there are certain things that they do that are very private. I know that there are some churches, for example, that at least used to have orgies, for example, but that was kept very hush-hush and behind closed doors. And that also falls in line with some of their more bizarre rituals. Like there have been some satanic churches that have done animal sacrifice in the past, or at the very least, some of them have mutilated the corpses of animals to fulfill these rituals, eating raw meat, these sorts of things. I mean, they're really bizarre stuff, but I don't know if it's universal. I honestly don't know that much. But I know it has happened. It's been recorded.
interesting. Okay, number 7 on the list, forgetfulness of past orthodoxies. And they kind of seem to be linking this with brainwashing people into accepting new realities or just general brainwashing. Number 8 on there is counterproductive pride, which again, these seem to be a sensible list of things you shouldn't do, and yet there's that weirdness, And the last one on there is lack of aesthetics.
See,
And
that's fascinating to me.
What?
Yes.
Somebody describe that. What?
lack of a sense of awe and the sense of the transcendent or the luminous, the ability to look at a piece of art and see beauty in it, or listen to music and that sort of thing. But I love their list.
Gotcha.
I understand what they're going for here. It sounds like they're trying to very much make it all about the individual here, because it doesn't sound like, for example, they didn't mention, say, rape in any of that, or torture or bestiality. Right. I mean, these aren't things that they're concerned with. Hurting other people, even stealing from other people. I don't think that was mentioned. It's all very much about improving you, trying to get yourself to become a nicer person. And I think that I like where they're going with it, because if you apply the things that they suggest, I honestly don't think you would be that type of person anyway.
Right. And if you read through some of their own, other writings, they'll strictly write in there that they're all for, improving society, not hurting other people, helping other people. They mention all that good stuff as well. But this is kind of their, I guess, top 9 list. For whatever reason, it's just 9. This is, again, probably like a rebellious thing where it's not a list of 10, it's 9.
Right. His name's LaVeyan, right? He started it.
LaVey, yeah.
Oh, LaVey. Man, you really got to be into this stuff to do that, because you literally will have no friends outside of your religion. Nobody would be like, LaVey, you're the guy who wrote the Satanic Bible. I can't be your friend. Sorry. Even if you are cool, I cannot be your friend.
Just by the name? Come on.
The way that they're perceived is unusual, but that's also what they're going for as well. I mean, the Satanic Temple as a religion and political organization, they actually like to participate in public affairs, political actions and lobbying and things like that, but they tend to do it in a pranky manner. They're pranks, and I'm going to call them pranks. I don't mind calling a lot of them pranks. They're designed to highlight religious hypocrisy and advance the cause of secularism. I have an example here. In one of their actions, they performed what they called a pink mass. They performed this pink mass over the grave of the mother of an evangelical Christian and prominent anti-LGBT preacher, Fred Phelps. The temple claimed that the mass converted the spirit of Phelps's mother into a lesbian. That was the whole point of the ritual. They were doing some voodoo magic to turn his mom gay. And so that was their prank, they're just doing silly stuff like that. But they also do a lot of the more serious stuff, like the statue thing we mentioned. But it's these prank type things that give them the bad rap, in my mind.
But that's the stuff that's really great, isn't it? I mean, I guess you brought up the question earlier, do they really believe in this ritualistic stuff? But the stuff they do as advocates is really pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they don't believe most of this stuff. It's just for show, basically. And just as an example of that, I have another list here, guys, and it's the 11 satanic rules of the earth.
Okay. Rules of the earth?
Rules of the earth. And okay. I mean, as soon as you read this, and this is straight up from their website, churchofsatan.com, you'll understand that these guys are, they're not serious about this stuff, right? They're serious in terms of their activism and some of the goals they try to achieve, but not really about the religious part of it. And it's, number 1, do not give opinions or advice unless you're asked. Well, what do you know? Do not tell your troubles to others unless you're sure they want to hear them.
Okay.
Come on. I mean, okay, number 3. This is good stuff. I mean, when in another's lair, show him respect or else do not go there. And I love this one. Number 4 just kills me. If a guest in your lair annoys you, treat him cruelly and without mercy. I mean, it's just funny stuff that just tells you that they don't buy this.
Yeah, I'm convinced.
Yeah. I love some of the other ones are pretty funny too. Number 6, do not take that which does not belong to you unless it is a burden to the other person and he cries out to be relieved. And this is a good one. They have another one that says, do not harm children, like plain and simple, or do not complain about anything to which you need not subject yourself. Hey, do not kill non-human animals unless you're attacked or for your food. Some of these are very sensible.
And then some of them are like outright ridiculous.
Yeah, and I mean, the last one there is, again, just hilarious. When walking in open territory, bother no one. If someone bothers you, ask him to stop. If he doesn't stop, destroy him. I mean, and again, it's 11. There's one rule set was 9, and this one is 11. They don't want to do 10. It's again the whole rebellion thing. I like it. I think they're a good bunch. They have obviously some weird stuff that is just unexplainable in context of all the other beliefs and views that they have, and like these sensible rules just completely do not go together with drinking urine.
See, I need to do more work on that.
Yeah.
Are you sure about that, Caleb? I need references. I need documentation.
I don't have any references for the urine drinking thing. These are. I didn't think it would be important enough to write down.
Come on, really?
I'll make a note of
I have
next
10
time. I thought it would
YouTube
be
videos.
somewhat satirical, so that's all the reason I put it in there.
Little did you know?
It's true.
Little did you know that I would be all over that.
All right, fact check me, folks. It's okay. I don't mind.
Oh no!
Don't take my word for it.
To be honest, as soon as you said urine drinking, I suddenly became interested in joining.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, bad joke. Sorry, guys.
Oh man. Well, some of these things really are probably meant to just shock people and to get them to talk about the Church of Satan, and that way kind of spread their other messages as well. It's kind of like there's no bad advertisement. As long as people are talking about you, the message will reach who it has to. I feel like it's kind of part of the strategy with some of these more shocking things that they do.
Well, let's do another one. Protest.
All right. Well, I wanted to go real quick to something else. I don't know if you guys are familiar with John Oliver, but he not too long ago established his own church. It was called Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. He was upset with some of the evangelical pastors that he thought were just robbing people, from TV when they ask him for donations and for seed money and for some of that stuff. So he quite literally established this church, and it went on for a little while. He ended up shutting it down because of some disgusting things that people sent him in the mail. But he donated the money to, something like Doctors Without Borders. But the interesting part that he mentioned in his show was, how does the IRS determine if an organization is a church and therefore should have, should be exempt from taxes, should be tax exempt for religious purposes? And based on that list, actually humanism, which we subscribe to, has been determined to be a religion. You don't have to fulfill all the requirements that are in that list, but at least some of them should be fulfilled. And I think it's interesting to go over. And I'll just read through it really quickly, and maybe we can comment on it for a little bit. But it has to have, number one, it's a 14-point test, so it has to have distinct legal existence, recognized creed and form of worship, definite and distinct ecclesiastical government, formal code of doctrine and discipline, distinct religious history, membership not associated with any other church or denomination, organization of ordained ministers selected after completing prescribed course of study, literature of its own, established places of worship, regular congregation, regular religious services, Sunday school for the religious instruction of youth, and school for the preparation of its members. I don't know. What do you guys think of that list? Is that too easy, too strict of a list? Any thoughts on it?
I don't think you should be tax exempt for anything. So I guess I guess that'd be my first point. There shouldn't be a list for getting tax exempt.
Well, I can kind of agree. I don't have a problem with nonprofits being tax exempt. Certain, like Doctors Without Borders, those sorts of things, I don't mind those being tax exempt, because if they encourage humanitarian work, I don't mind those being tax exempt. But I think you need to be able to prove that you're a nonprofit. So if you want to be tax exempt, you just need to file a 501(c) application form like anyone else. And if you're a nonprofit, you'll make it. I just don't see. I agree with you in that outright nothing should be tax exempt a priori.
Right. But is that even a good list to recognize what makes a religion a religion? Because obviously, some religions out there are, in fact, atheistic. Even some forms of Buddhism don't have like a supernatural God that they believe in.
Well, I don't agree that humanism is in and of itself a religion, and as such, I don't think that it should get tax exempt status for that. I think that if you want to be a humanist tax exempt organization, then you just need to be a nonprofit. But I don't think being a nonprofit makes you a religion.
I don't know. I think any group that promotes an idea, not an ideal, I think would fall as a religion. But I don't think that any group whose sole purpose is to promote some sort of idea or ideal should be tax exempt. Like, I don't know, any kind of promoting of something shouldn't be a tax exempt operation. I think if you're like Doctors Without Borders or something like that, like, yeah, it's a charitable thing, not for profit, but it doesn't promote an idea.
Right.
I don't know. That's
I mean, or if you're an organization, for example, that maybe gives housing to homeless people, or if like those kind of activist organizations, I agree with you, should definitely be tax exempt, so that when people donate money to them, more of the money reaches the goal that these people wanted to reach by donating, as opposed to when you donate to a church, it's like the spread of this philosophy, or there's not really a tangible benefit to it almost.
Well, yeah, they're not.
I was gonna say, I guess if you want to be fair, though, if you're going to give churches tax exemption, then you have to like have a really loose criteria, because you can't define what a church is and isn't. So you have to be really loose with it, or you just take it away altogether. So I don't know.
I like the latter, 100%. Let's just take away that status 100%. I lost my train of thought, though, so I'm gonna go ahead and let someone else continue.
Well, I was gonna say, that's why, kind of to Dee's point there, that's, it is a very loose list, and not all those 14 points there have to be met. John Oliver was talking about how the fact itself that he has a show that airs once a week at a given time, like that was enough to satisfy number 12 on the list. There was regular religious services, so that was considered a regular service, just the fact that it has a show.
That's
and
good.
He is a distinct legal entity, because his show is its own like corporation, so there's 2 of them down. He had like 4 or 5 that on the list that he had satisfied without doing anything, just by him having a TV show.
I'm not a big fan of this list, period. I mean, I'm sure that this isn't like an actual official list of some kind, but it's concerning to me how often the words religion and religious are used in their 14-point test for determining what is a religion and religious. That in and of itself kind of concerns me. Well,
that's just to give them tax exempt status. That's the 14-point test for a religious organization to get tax exempt status. So I was kind of extrapolating that list to basically mean how like government recognizes a religion, basically.
Giving tax exempt status just promotes fraud, because if you can basically get a 25-30% discount on everything, not paying taxes, then there's a lot of people who will take that opportunity, and a lot of them may not necessarily be the most moral of individuals.
Well, I think the biggest problem with religion, with churches having the tax exempt status is the fact that they're not required to have open book. We at FreeThought,
that's true.
We have open book. We're obligated to as 501(c)(3), and that's the only thing that gives us our tax exempt status. So churches have an additional tier to their protection that other organizations don't have.
Right. No, that's a very good point.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that helps to generate the cycle, that perpetual cycle of fraud and such. Because honestly, I'd go so far as to say, I'm not religious. Obviously, I think that tithing in general is fraud. But John Oliver really highlighted on the episode that you're describing here some very good examples of how extreme the fraud can get.
Right.
I mean, anyone who doesn't know, you can look into like Kent Hovind, for example. If you don't know the name Kent Hovind, and look it up, that is probably the best example of Christian fraud that I can think of.
Yeah, there's other people out there like Creflo Dollar. I mean, who has the last name of Dollar? I want to know. But how do you end up with that name? But the guy's name is like Creflo Dollar. There was another one that was talking about how, just from church donations, like he bought this airplane, and then because some people, said how that was immoral, he shouldn't have been wasting church money on that. Like he went and bought another airplane. so yeah,
talking like $64 million planes, aren't we?
Oh yeah,
ridiculous amounts of money. And it's amazing that he can be on stage in front of what looked to me to be at least 25,000 people, just boast and brag. If God wants me to have a $64 million plane, well, by golly, you can't stop me from dreaming. And people are cheering him on. Take my money.
Yeah. But they tell the people that when they donate that money to him, that's a seed money. So then they're going to receive a bigger reward.
Right.
But anyway, we're straying from the subject of. So do you guys want to give another example of a protest religion?
Sure. I want to go to one of my favorites. I'll keep this one brief because we touched on something very similar with the Church of Satanism, but I want to kind of touch on the Church of Cannabis. This one has some local roots, actually. It was established in Indianapolis, Indiana in March of 2015. Its founder, Bill Levin, a.k.a. the Stoner Pope.
Is that the name that you gave him, or is that how he's affectionately known?
Nope. The reason why I bring this up is because he established his church in direct response to the state's Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the RFRA, for those of you who might not remember. When asked by CNN's Brooke Baldwin, he said that the reason he wanted to create the Temple of Cannabis was because he felt that there was this urgent need for a new religion. Then he went on to say, quote, "People are burnt out on the old doctrine. They offer guilt. They offer sin. Come on. We offer no judgment whatsoever. We're based on love, compassion, and health. The good things for us, the healthy things for us. And the monthly dues are relatively cheap. Instead of paying a 10% tithe every week, you only owe $4.20 a month."
Wow, that's a bargain.
So obviously this is one of these protest religions that weren't necessarily meant to be taken seriously, but they were legitimately trying to establish their religious status.
Mm-hmm.
So the group actually planned to test the RFRA on July 1st with a service that was supposed to include the use of cannabis. Oh. But they just got too much legal pressure from the city, and the service actually never used marijuana at all. Several days after its first service, the church actually, in retaliation, sued the state of Indiana and the state of Indianapolis, claiming that the presence of marijuana, the marijuana laws, infringed on their religious beliefs. And that was the whole point that they were trying to set in here.
Right.
However, on the bright side here, the services that they held went without any arrests. They didn't have any problems. And this is despite the fact that there were quite a few Christian protesters nearby. And the city wasn't being nice to them either. People were trying to troll them by taking up all the parking spaces nearby so that there was no place for these people to go. So people were walking for a ridiculous miles, I think. I don't see any specific distances, but I would guess
they went
miles
far.
probably. I thought this was pretty brilliant to try to do. This kind of reminds me of the flying spaghetti monster church. What is that? What do they call it? The Pastafarian church? Do they have
the Pastafarians. Yeah.
So, well, as with the Satanists, I don't know what they call themselves here. I'm just going to call them potheads, I guess. I don't know what else to call them. The potheads, they themselves, they have their own creed that they call the 12 Pathways to Life.
Wow.
And this is actually pretty fun list, and it makes sense. It's a good list. I don't think it's enough to get you through all of life, but it's pretty decent guidelines here. Number 1, don't be a butthole. Treat everyone with love as an equal. Number 2, the day starts with your smile every morning. When you get up, wear it first.
Nice.
Number 3,
nice.
help others when you can, not for money, but because it's needed. And I really like that one. Number 4, treat your body as a temple. Do not poison it with poor quality foods and sodas. Number 5, take advantage of people. I'm sorry, I take that back. Do not take advantage of people.
Okay.
Do not intentionally hurt anything. Number 6 is one my dad used to tell me all the time. Don't start a fight, only finish it.
Only finish it. There you go.
Number 7, grow food, raise animals, get nature into your daily routine. Speaks a lot about what they represent. Don't be a troll on the internet. Respect others without name calling and being vulgarly aggressive.
Wow.
Number 9, spend at least 10 minutes a day just contemplating life in a quiet place. Now that I can get down with. I like that. Number 10, protect those who cannot protect themselves. And number 11, laugh often, share humor, have fun in life, be positive. And last but not least, the most important, cannabis, the healing plant, is our sacrament. It brings us closer to ourselves and others. It is our fountain of health, our love, curing us from illness and depression. We embrace it with our whole heart and spirit, individually and as a group. So there you go. There are the 12 pathways of life for the Church of Cannabis. And yes, they actually still have active chapters. Now that there are several states popping up that have legal recreational use, the church has exploded in recent years, as you can imagine. People actually like going to church to go and get stoned, apparently.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Well, just like be a good person all around, enjoy life, and get high. So I can see a lot of people joining the church.
Did the lawsuit go anywhere, though? When they sued the city to be able to use, or the state to be able to use cannabis, did that go anywhere?
No, it died.
Okay.
It didn't go anywhere, unfortunately. It was enough to bring attention to the the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and I think that particular bill ended up getting shot down, did it not?
I think so. They passed it, but then they modified it because a lot of businesses, and including our organization, scream pretty loud about it. So
I know that it didn't change anything. They're not allowed to use cannabis during their services, but it's unfortunate. I honestly wish that they'd have fixed that, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned
it'll be here one day.
Caleb, you mentioned Pastafarians.
Yeah,
and I have a question for you.
I thought that list you were reading was
touched
totally
by his noodly appendage?
Not as often as I'd like. I tend to forget the Holy One, and I ignore him, and I haven't been to my confessionals as often as I should be.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's where all the touching happens in the booth.
Right. Oh, that is okay. Well, here's what the Pastafarians believe. They claim that they're not anti-religious. They're not a joke. They exist existed for hundreds of years, supposedly. Of course, that's not true. But I found this little 2-sentence, 3-sentence passage very, very good. It says, we believe the flying spaghetti monster created the world much as it exists today, but for reasons unknown, made it appear that the universe is billions of years old instead of thousands, and that life evolved in its current state rather than created in its current form. Every time a researcher carries out an experiment that appears to confirm one of these quote-unquote scientific theories supporting an old Earth and evolution, we can be sure that the flying spaghetti monster is there modifying the data with his noodly appendage. We don't know why he does this. We believe he does. That is our faith.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And right. Now all they need is their own version of a creationist museum, and they should put it right next to Ken Ham's.
That would be awesome.
The Flying Spaghetti Monster Creationist Museum in protest, right next door.
They should
Ken
sell
Ham's Creationist Museum.
For fundraising. They should sell like different varieties of pasta and like pasta sauce.
Oh, they have to at least have 3 or 4 different Italian restaurants in there, minimum.
Hey,
and at least church, one buffet.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. A church that all it is just a restaurant that they serve all kinds of different pasta. That'd be great.
Tax exempt?
I'd go there all the time. Oh, that'd be even cheaper. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, I keep hearing all this stuff on tax exemption, and I'm like, man, I just need to start a religion. And that life would be a heck of a lot easier if I just started a religion and took it seriously.
Well, the Pastafarians are an established official religion now, so we can, in theory, start a Pastafarian church and have our own tax exempt status. It's I'm 100% on that. All we would have to do is do it. I could literally, I wonder if it would go this far. I wonder if I could turn my house into a temple of the flying spaghetti monster and have tax exempt status on my house. Is that possible?
Sure.
If I get you guys to come over to my house instead of doing the meetings on Sundays, you guys come over here, barbecue.
You're going to have to convince us somehow, though, to donate money to you, because without that tax exempt status isn't worth much.
True.
No, it's a protest religion. It's all about the point.
But you got to get people to be true believers. You can take way more money out of a true believer than you can out of somebody just doing it for protest reasons. Protesters are usually pretty cheap, but true believers, even if they don't have money, they'll give you money.
I'm pretty sure I can sell some pasta.
Homemade. If it's homemade, I'll buy it.
Well, I really love the Pastafarians. I mean, they are pretty much the epitome of what it means to be a protest religion.
Yeah.
They were the ones who also were, it had to have been. The Pastafarians were the ones that were the people that were putting the strainers on their heads for the driver's license photos.
Yes.
Because you could only be wearing a hat if you file under sort of religious protest, I believe.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that is true. That is true.
That's pretty awesome.
That is pretty funny. I want to throw in there a couple more. We only have about 10 minutes left in the show. And just really briefly, I'll mention one, and I want to spend the rest of the time on the last one. So, have you guys ever heard of copymism?
Yes.
No.
Yes, I have.
So it was this guy in Sweden registered a church where they believe in file sharing. So they were trying to get around laws for copyright laws, and they had to file several times to get it registered. But finally, it was a recognized religion in Sweden in 2011, 2012. It's funny, it was this young kid in his early 20s that did this whole thing, and they claim that sharing information through copying is akin to religious service, and they hold Control C and Control V as sacred symbols kind of like when you do a copy and paste on your keyboard, that's their sacred symbols. And they believe the information is holy, and copying it is a sacrament, and that information holds value. And by copying it, you multiply that value. And so, copying is central to their organization and its members. So I thought that was just a hilarious way of trying to go around copyright laws.
I think it's hilarious, but I also think it's a little bit overreaching. All right, the Pastafarians, they understand the limitations. All right, you got to baby step this process a little bit. For example, not everyone can wear hats unless you got a religious reason. Screw that. Let's make a reason so that anyone can wear a hat. Become a Pastafarian. Protest with us. This right here is a whole different ballgame. This is a global thing. This doesn't just affect your local community or even your state or your country. This is a global thing. So I think it's a little bit overreaching, but at least somebody tried.
Well, it's only recognized in Sweden, so.
And it doesn't really sound like it's a protest religion. It sounds like it's somebody who just wants to get free stuff.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't think, like I said, I'm all for the Pastafarians and what they do. I don't think I'm a big fan of this copymism movement.
No, I think it's pretty silly, right?
Yeah, honestly, I think it kind of gives a bad name to the other protest religions. Like I said at the beginning, I like protest religions and what they do. This, to me, is like, it's overreaching. I think that they just take it a step too far.
Well, with just about 5 minutes left in the show, I wanted to mention another protest religion that maybe wouldn't sound like a protest religion at first glance because it is part of Christianity, but I believe that it's so different from other sects that it is more or less a protest religion within Christianity, and that's the Amish. They came from Sweden and Germany through the Anabaptist tradition of the 16th century, and they migrated to the U.S. in like the 18th century. There's some Amish right outside of Fort Wayne. We've probably seen them around with the buggies and all that. But I think they have some beliefs that, make them a protest religion. So they believe, that God has called them to live this simple, humble life, based on their faith, discipline, humility. They're nonviolent, so they don't participate. Even if there's a draft, they'll resist it. And I read a story about these two brothers that, I think they got accused of treason because they wouldn't join the draft. I don't remember if it was for I think it was for World War II, but they went to jail for it. And, the community supported them basically because they stuck by their beliefs of nonviolence. They don't want to be the center of attention or to make graven images things, so they don't like their picture taken. They don't use technology because they believe that they shouldn't be, that there's some passage in the Bible that talks about they should keep yourself unspotted from the world. And, they really believe that you shouldn't judge other people so you're not judged. And I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that, in your opinion, the Amish would qualify as a protest religion?
Borderline.
Borderline?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, borderline. I would actually, if you're going to go that route, I can agree that they're a protest religion, but on the fringe of it.
Okay. D, any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm still struggling with if you can be a protest religion if you're a true believer.
Right.
To me, it's just another religion. It seems just as silly as every other one.
Most of them still speak kind of the old German Dutch dialect that they used to speak. So most Amish are bilingual. A lot of their church services are still in that old German dialect, but they all speak English perfectly, and very friendly people, really. Another thing that I found very interesting is they came from the Anabaptist tradition, And I guess what that means is that you're supposed to baptize twice. So the kids are baptized, when they're born, but they also have to accept and get rebaptized when they're older. And that's where, the whole Rumspringa, if you guys have heard of that, comes into place, because that's the time when they're supposed to accept the religion freely for themselves, or if they don't, you're being shunned from the community basically, and you can no longer come back. I mean, in some cases they'll take you back, but in many cases when you're shunned, you're out of there.
I've always loved the idea of Rumspringa, because very few other religions give you the opportunity to have an out, a free out. I mean, they accept your decision, but at the same time, as you had mentioned, once you're out, you're out. There is no going back. So there is a lot of pressure, especially since their whole life, all they've known is farming or whatever it is Amish do.
Right.
And then so they get an experience of what it's like in the 21st century. I'm amazed just that more of them don't. I don't know what's called. Be apostate, I guess. Leave the religion because of that. I'm shocked.
It's actually a little bit of a. It's not really practiced widely, where during Rumspringa, like, they go and get all crazy and experience the world and all that. For the most part, some rebellion during that time is tolerated, some misbehaving is tolerated, but it's not like some of those crazy movies, out there that portray this as if they're just going to get drunk every day and going to parties and all that. It's
do they go as a group?
Do
they go as a group of like other Amish people, doing this, or do they go out on their own? Do they still live at home while they're doing this, or do
yes,
they?
Yes. Oh, yeah. They're still at home. I mean, it starts at like your mid to late teens, and it ends mid to late 20s. So the Rumspringa period is a long period. That's when you find a wife. That's when you get married. All that, and you re-accept the church. And now, you really have to follow the rules and all that. And actually, Caleb, to the point that you made earlier, you're surprised that people don't leave more. I've read figures around 85 or 90% of kids decide to stay in the church. So there's, 10 to 15% do leave, which is not insignificant, and their numbers are growing a lot. I mean, they're growing by like 30 to 50% of their population per decade. So it's growing fast.
I wonder how long they can keep that up, though. I mean, unless they get more than 100 people every decade to join their group, they're going to run into a problem.
They have. They do have a little bit of a genetic problem, but from what I read on that, there's only a couple of genetic disease that are a little more common among them. But in general, genetic disease is not any more common in their population than among just the general public.
Well, how recent has this population boom been? Has this been a consistent thing since its inception, or what is this boom that you're describing a recent phenomenon?
Oh, no,
that's kind of what I'm getting at.
No, this has been going on for basically since they moved here, but it was a very, very small population. The number that I saw was, in like the 1920s, was like under 10,000 Amish were in the U.S. So they've been growing a lot. They really take seriously the whole be fruitful and multiply part of the Bible. They have very large families, and they're really tight families. They stay together. The parents help their children establish, get a house, a farm, whatever. We have wasted a full hour. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, all our listeners, and hopefully join us again next week for another exciting episode of the Hoosier Humanist Hour. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
That is all the time we have for you this week. This has been the Hoosier Humanist Hour. Be sure to check out FreeThought Fort Wayne on Facebook and on Meetup.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope your days are filled with logic, reasoning, and the eternal quest for knowledge.